My name is Beth. I am a first-time founder, and I'm working on a equestrian management system. I'm also studying a master's in veterinary physiotherapy, and I work part-time teaching and sourcing horses for clients.
So give me a little bit of a run through. Let's take it back to before we started working together. Give me a good understanding as to what is it that you were struggling with at that point in time, potentially the main challenges and what a typical week looked like for you.
So before we started working together, I think some of the main challenges were like one that definitely stuck out for me was consistency in my workflow. I would work very hard, have a lot of motivation, be very consistent, be getting a lot done one week and keep going and going and going and not knowing when to switch off until the point where I would reach burnout. And then I would plummet, crash, and burnout would be really challenging for me. It would last quite long and it would normally take me kind of about a week to get myself back together again, and I was noticing myself going in these big peaks and troughs. So consistency was a big challenge, and that was be more with the within the work. But even in my personal life, I think I struggled a lot with just chaos in my mind. I felt like I was always in fight or flight. I was always playing catch up. I was trying to organize 200 things and my brain was split into 10 different places. So that like lack of structure within my work also penetrated into my personal life and just made simple tasks like cooking healthy meals or, taking care of myself. It made it really challenging. So it was kind of this negative downward spiral that I would get sucked into.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of people, there's a saying that I use a lot. You've heard me say this many times, is that it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle.
Mm.
So when we're like living this out, it's very difficult for us often to be able to see the consequence that this is having because we're living it.
Mhm.
How long would you say that you were operating like that, potentially without realizing for? And what did you see as being almost this ripple effect in a consequence format?
To be honest, I think that that's always been the way I've been. If I think back to even school time, I have like highly achieved academic results, but it was a really difficult time for me because I knew inherently that my brain worked differently to everyone in the class in the way that the school system worked. So I would always end up leaving things last minute and then put myself under immense pressure before deadlines, and I would get things done and I would get them done to a high standard, but I would always be exhausted and always be stressed. So I feel like it's kind of been the standard, and I think that was one of the reasons I never really challenged it. I just assumed this was the way it needed to be. And then I think the first time I decided that I didn't want it to be like that anymore was when I moved from an undergrad level to a master's level in education. And I noticed the workload was becoming a lot more. It was a part time, so I didn't have the constant accountability from teachers every day. I was only seeing people, once a month or every 2 weeks. So it was much more self reliant. And then I also decided that would be a great time to start my own business. And I think in the world of entrepreneurship, especially as a first time founder, when you're doing something yourself, it can be very lonely. So you're relying heavily on yourself to be consistent, to stay on track, to get work done in a progressive manner. And I just noticed very soon on that that wasn't happening. And I kind of could feel myself for the first time in my life not being able to reach those deadlines that I would normally have been able to reach. So I think that was the first time then I was like, okay, enough is enough. I'm done being stressed and burnt out. Yeah, there must be an easier way to do it. And that's when I saw your video online, and I kind of always had a suspicion about my brain type and the way that I would function versus other people, but I really disliked the labels that came with it and the assumptions that were made along with people who have, you know, neurotypical, neurodivergent or any of these labels. I just hated them. So growing up, I was always very averted to the idea that potentially my brain worked differently. And I think that was what really drew me to you. Is the first time I saw your video is you were looking at this brain type as an advantage as opposed to a disability or like a restriction. Deep down, I knew it was always an advantage. I knew because of the way my brain worked, I could achieve stuff that most people couldn't achieve. So it was the first time I started to see, okay, someone gets this. Someone knows that if we can leverage the way our brain is working, we can actually be highly achievable and we can do amazing things. So that really drew me to you. And then also the labeling of like, I don't even want to use the word ADHD. I want to look at it as like a hunter type. And these metaphors just made so much sense. And it was literally like you were inside my brain describing what you saw. I think it's really important for me personally is to learn. It doesn't matter what way your brain works. It doesn't matter what the label is or the type. For me, the biggest thing I've learned from you is it's important to learn how your brain works and what works for you, because even within the world of ADD or ADHD, like everyone is so different. So if you are just looking at solving a problem based on an archetype, you're never going to get the right solution for you personally. So I love that method of actually analyzing the way you show up or the way you respond to different systems. And like my favorite quote from you is like, it's you're not the problem, it's the systems you're using as the problem. So looking and analyzing at the systems that are in your kind of day-to-day life and making them unique to you has been like invaluable for me.
And I'm curious as well, because especially if, as you have said, you are someone that has been cognitively aware for a long time, maybe all your life, that the way that your brain works is slightly different to how other people's brain works. And, you know, we're often trying to like figure out that, and also like, how can we get it to do what we want it to do at certain times? I'm curious, what are the things that you tried prior to us working together, and why do you feel they maybe didn't give you what it is that you needed entirely?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think before working with you, like the things that I tried were basic, your kind of stereotypical productivity advice. So, I tried, and I'm someone who has been very invested in learning about myself. I was always trying to improve the areas that I knew I struggled with. But I just, again, the information that was available to me was very stereotypical. Do your to-do list, make your SMART goals, make sure you're setting alarms, productivity, productivity, productivity. And it just felt like friction. It just felt like an extra thing to do in the day. It felt like it was adding another task that I was averted to, and I really had to overcome all of this. And I, to be honest, used to then get a lot of guilt because I was struggling with these tips that were supposed to make my life easier. I kind of then had the assumption that, oh, maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not very smart. Maybe I don't have enough grit or determination to be successful. That actually consumed me for many years. But then I guess it just got to the point where I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. And then I think I actually, for the first time last year, sat down and researched what are the symptoms of ADHD? What are things that I can do that are specific to that brain type? And it was the first time I got like a little glimpse of small tasks or small ways of looking at things that made sense to me. But I realized very quickly that one or two little things off ChatGPT wasn't going to be enough. I needed someone who has knowledge and understanding of what's happening inside my head and like has experience with techniques and different frameworks that we can trial and error and see what works for me. So I knew very, very quickly that I needed more support than just a little online research.
I'm curious if there was a specific breaking point or a catalyst point for you where it was like, enough is enough. I now need to seek more help than ChatGPT, more help than the productivity books. I need to try and sort after someone that is more specialist in this field. Was there a moment for you where, the penny dropped and it was like, right, now's the time?
It was to be honest, universe. It just happened. You came up on my newsfeed, and I'm also not the type of person that falls for marketing. I follow a lot of leaders, coaches, life coaches, all of these people online. And anytime I see their videos, I'm like, that's great. But, I never get sucked in. And there was just something about that first video that I saw when you were speaking about, it was a video where you were talking about the difference between the hunter brain and the farmer brain. And for me, it was like instant, didn't need to think twice, no resistance. It just felt like, okay, sounds more like what I need. And I think like within the first 30, I didn't even finish watching the video. I just messaged you straight away and was like, I'm interested, please, let's have a call. And again, within the first call, when we were chatting and you were describing a little bit about what you did, and I was talking a little bit about the challenges that I had, it was no friction. For me, it felt right.
Me through what the first few weeks looked like. What did we actually work on, and how did you find that type of work?
So we began by analyzing the kind of systems that I use day to day. Was there any struggles that I had that were personally causing me to, or like putting a block in between me being able to work? So things that were draining my battery, areas that were giving me stress or anxiety, or reasons that I wasn't able to get to that consistency. And then it was very much just a process of self-analysis, of like really looking into a lot of kind of shadow work. And I think in the beginning, it was really powerful for me to have those conversations with you, to be like, actually, no, I'm not lazy. I'm not easy distracted. I'm not, all of these labels that I'd been given as a kid. Actually, just the way that my world is designed isn't beneficial to me. So we looked at like the system's very basic things of, how can I wake up and before my brain starts to go to work, how can I make sure that I'm primed to be able to do the best quality work that I can do? And then also, how can I make sure that I have a measurable outcome of when that work is done for the day so that I can switch off and not feel guilt about switching off? Because that was a huge thing for me, is I always felt so much guilt about taking a break or a day off because I never felt like I was doing enough. And I always felt in this frantic, there's 110 things I need to do at any given moment. Whereas we were then able to clearly define, okay, what do we actually need to do? And what of the other 100 things are just chaos. So we started with that. And only then, once I started to be able to feel better about myself and the way I showed up in my day to day, naturally it kind of rolled into then, okay, the way I'm organizing the business, how am I planning the business? How am I really staying true to the goals that I'm setting versus just setting these random non-measurable goals that inevitably fall to the back of my head? So then we really looked at, okay, we did like the 135 of how can we actually create these measurable goals and ensure that we stay true to them every day. Because I think especially when you're working alone or you're in a room by yourself, it's very easy to just be like, oh, I'm doing this and then I'll just, oh, and then I'll just, yeah. So it's very easy to get distracted and go off course. Whereas we've worked really hard in ensuring that every day the work that I put in is necessary, it's going in the right direction, and it's not just a waste of time or energy.
Absolutely. That's a really thorough explanation of what it's like to be immersed in this experience. Now, let's talk results. Let's talk about like what's actually happened for you. I'm keen to hear both the subjective and the objective. Like what's concretely different in both like your business and your life now compared to when we started or before we started?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's different now versus when we started is this is probably the longest period of time I've gone without burning out, and that's been huge for me. It's also been probably one of the busiest times of my life. I've been taking on a lot personally with the business, with the masters, with also the part-time work that I do. I've had a lot of plates spinning at the same time. It's, yeah, the first time that I feel like I've had the tools to be able to notice areas that need cleaning up or systems that aren't working for me and be able to reevaluate and recreate that system to make sure that it's streamlined and it's working for me. And then also know when to stop or when to take rest and how to take rest without feeling guilty, and ensuring that when I show up to my desk, I'm ready for work as opposed to just showing up and hoping work gets done. The biggest things that I've noticed is like I've actually now started to become consistent. I haven't experienced any of these deep troughs. I'm still experiencing the peaks, but I feel like that's going to be part of it. But I'm able to manage the peaks and really allow myself to take rest so that I don't plummet after. I've been accepted into a few accelerator programs, and already I feel like even though the workload is increasing, I have this base framework that I can just slot all of these new experiences or new information into. So I can really see the value in that. And then like, yeah, my personal life, I feel at ease on a day to day because instead of when shit hits the fan, instead of panicking and like feeling guilty or being negative about myself, I'm able to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, let's reevaluate. Why is this happening? And I have, like you said, I have the language now, metaphors in my head that help me understand it at a deeper level as opposed to just using words. And that's why I love the metaphors like the hunter brain, because I can really relate to that feeling of like going on a hunt. And if there is stuff around me that is distracting me, I'm not going to be able to make the kill and I'm not going to be able to finish the task that I set out to. So having those metaphors has just been able to make straight line shooting much easier.
It's always awesome to see that land for people as well, and then grasp it fully, and then live through that. Because I know for me that was so impactful as to how it completely changed the trajectory of my life when I was able to really understand that metaphor and then embody it as a way of
Mm,
operating. And ultimately the whole gig here is to just give you guys a different paradigm to
yeah.
see the world through and see yourself through. And it does completely change everything from us being labeled or labeling ourselves as broken, inefficient, lazy, whatever it is, right? Not disciplined enough, to understanding that we are just a different brain type, that's a different archetype, that just needs to be in a different environment, needs to be
Yeah.
almost like have a different operating system and different rules to live by, different laws. And when we truly grasp and understand that, it doesn't become as complex anymore. We can see the
Mm,
equation. Even when we're going through challenging periods, we can almost quite quickly identify, right, I'm feeling this way. Like where is there an environmental mismatch? Where is there a system error? And we can quite quickly then identify that. And it's, oh, cool. Like, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. As we
yeah.
said earlier, the
Mhm,
environment or the system is just not working right now. That's what needs to
mhm.
change, as opposed to me being the thing that needs to change.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, as we know, we are very feelings orientated as well.
Mhm,
So I'm curious, by doing this work, and I know this is totally subjective, but I'm
mm.
still keen to hear it. How has this changed how you feel on a day to day basis?
Yeah, this was another big breakthrough, like the way I was feeling prior. And I think I touched off it earlier when I was saying how, growing up in a school system or with parents who are maybe neurotypical and don't understand the way that you're thinking. And I think we're highly empathetic as well. I'm super empathetic and I'm also highly sensitive to emotion. Um, and I think that coupled with the peaks and the trough can make balancing a day to day emotional stability quite challenging. I went through a period in my life of actually thinking I was, slightly bipolar or because I would have these extreme highs and feeling like I can do anything, life is amazing, to this really, really deep low and, experience big areas of depression and self doubt and not feeling good enough. And we did an exercise using the alter ego. And I think this was huge. And I still use it nearly every day of envisioning who it is that you actually want to be on a day to day basis and ensuring that the actions that you are doing are aligning with that future self of yours. And also, this whole thing about when you set up a system around you that nourishes you and it makes success easier, naturally you start to believe in yourself more. And tasks that used to be super challenging, like for myself personally, cooking healthy meals used to be such a challenge. And then I wouldn't eat properly. And then I would be, nutrient deficient. And then I would feel tired and weak and get anemic. And it was just a mess. Whereas we worked a lot on creating a system where I could have meals ready and planned. And then a very simple task that used to be challenging becomes something you don't even think about anymore, just becomes something that happens. And it really helps you build confidence in yourself and build this integrity that we talked about in yourself because you realize again, okay, I'm not the problem. I'm not, like you said, broken or inefficient. It's just the everything around me is pushing against me. So I have so much additional friction of just existing, of just getting up out of bed, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, making breakfast. Like that in itself used to feel like a mountain to me because the way my kitchen was set up, the way my routine was set up, all of the surroundings were pushing against me and causing friction. Yeah, I feel like definitely my confidence on a day-to-day basis has been massively improved. Even just not having any burnouts has made my emotional. I'm going out more, I'm seeing friends more, I'm creating space and time in my life to do things that I love versus being so overly immersed that I just forget about anything outside of my office, which, is never going to be healthy. So yeah, and for different reasons, there's been like a massive increase in just my general kind of peace and happiness from a day to day.
And if you had to, I guess, sum up this experience in a single sentence, which I know is difficult, what would that be?
Understanding that it's not, you're not the problem, it's the systems that are working against you. So I think for me, if I was to summarize in one sentence, it's realizing that I'm not the issue and all these systems are working against me, but then also understanding how they're working against me so that I have my own tools and strategies to improve them and basically to put myself in a position where I'm most likely going to succeed, as opposed to putting myself in a position where I'm getting friction and resistance from every side.
And if someone's watching this and they're in the position that you were in before, where they're feeling stuck, they're overwhelmed, they feel like they're spinning their wheels, no matter what it is that they've tried, it just doesn't seem to have worked. They know inherently, and they have known for a long time, that they are different. What would you say to that person if they were on the fence about reaching out? What would you want them to know?
I came into this being like, okay, what is the worst that can happen? Is there any harm that could occur when I'm reaching out or having that initial call where you're like introducing yourself and chatting versus what are the benefits that could come out of this? Yes, we could get on a call and I could think, it's not for me. Great. What harm is done there? Versus I could get on the call which is what happened to me, within the first 10 minutes being like, where the hell has this guy been for the past 5 years of my life? And then really start to just experience all these benefits and start to understand yourself. And I think, especially when you're investing in yourself, we chatted about this great idea of if you're learning content, but you're not able to use that content in context, it's just expensive entertainment. It's useless. Whereas if you're learning stuff that instantly can be put into practice and instantly you're starting to reap rewards of, that is worth more than any investment. And I think that's what I've noticed about doing these coaching calls versus other, therapy or other online when I tried to self-help is I would get all this great advice from all these people online or from books, but it was information that I was like, oh, that's really interesting, cool. And then gone. Versus when we're on our calls, it's so specific to me and it's so specific to the situation I'm in that like that day or the day after I can implement it and then it becomes second nature and instantly I'm reaping rewards.
Is there anything else that you want to add that I haven't yet asked?
I think what I've been really grateful for in this experience is, yes, it is like a business coaching, but I feel like we haven't been limited to anything. I feel like I could show up whatever state I was in, whether it was, crawling out of bed because I'm feeling overwhelmed or my internet's off and I'm having to join on a phone in the middle of nowhere. I feel like there's been no limits. You've created a space where I can show up exactly how I am and we can target exactly what's needed in that moment. There hasn't been this fear from me of, oh, I can't say that because it's too personal, or maybe we have to talk about this because this is what we said we talked about last week. It's been super fluid. And by allowing that fluidity, it's actually meaned that more areas of my life have synergetically improved instead of just being like, the business is getting better. I think I'm really grateful for that, for you holding a space that is super open and honest and non-judgmental and just allows me to show up whatever way I can show up. And I think that's been super important for me because the struggles that I have had haven't been in one area of my life. It's been all consuming. So yeah, being allowed and being encouraged to address all of these areas has been, amazing for me. So I'm very grateful for that. I've spoken a lot about our sessions to like my friends, but it's actually been really nice to say it to you because I feel like I'm like complimenting you so much behind your back and being like, oh my God, this guy's great. He's done this and this and this. But it actually feels really nice to be like, actually say it to your face and just like double down on actually how much you've helped me and also how you've helped me in all the different areas. So I think that's been really nice to actually be able to say it to your face and be like, hey, by the way, you're great.